Hello, wonderful listeners, and welcome back to the channel. We're so glad you've chosen to spend some time with us today. If you enjoy stories that whisk you away to magical places, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming adventures. And tell us in the comments below, where are you listening from today? Now, settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin our tale, 9 Lives in the Forest. The whispering woods stretched endlessly, a vast emerald sea under a sky that painted itself with hues of sapphire and amethyst. Within its ancient embrace lived Whiskers, a creature of sleek ebony fur and eyes like polished jade. He was not born in the forest, but adopted by its silent rhythms and secret pathways as a stray kitten, who had wandered far from the human world and found a wild, untamed home amidst the towering pines and gnarled oaks. Whiskers was a master of stealth, a silent hunter whose paws barely disturbed the fallen leaves. His days were a delicate dance of survival and exploration. He knew the scent of a hidden mouse, the rustle of a squirrel, the distant hoot of an owl signaling the approach of night. Every sun-dappled glade, every shadowed thicket held a story, a scent, a potential meal, or a hidden danger. His early life in the forest was a continuous lesson. He learned to distinguish the harmless rustle of a curious squirrel from the heavy tread of a badger, the soft whisper of the wind through the canopy from the ominous creak of a falling branch. The forest was his teacher, a stern but fair mentor, revealing its secrets only to those patient and observant enough to notice. One crisp autumn morning, a thick blanket of fog lay low, muffling the usual sounds of the forest. Whiskers was stalking a field mouse near the edge of a clearing, his body low to the ground, every muscle coiled and ready. The air was damp and cool against his whiskers, carrying the earthy scent of decay and damp soil. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the swirling mist above. It was a magnificent hawk, its eyes like burning embers, its talons extended, locked onto his small form. In an instant, the world shifted from a quiet hunt to a desperate fight for survival. This was his first true brush with the edge of his existence, the first test of his fabled 9 lives. Instinct took over. Whiskers didn't freeze. He exploded into motion, a black blur darting under the nearest tangle of roots. The hawk, a blur of feathers and frustrated screech, slammed into the ground where he had been moments before, its talons tearing at the earth. Whiskers lay panting, heart thudding against his ribs, hidden beneath the gnarled roots of an ancient oak. He could feel the vibrations of the hawk's agitated movements above him, heard the frustrated snaps of its beak. Slowly, cautiously, he peered out. The hawk circled once more, its keen eyes piercing the fog, before letting out a frustrated cry and soaring away, disappearing back into the ethereal mist. Whiskers remained hidden for a long time, letting the adrenaline subside. The image of those sharp talons seared into his memory. He had survived. The forest had offered its protection, and his instincts had been razor sharp. He emerged, shaken but resolute, understanding a little more deeply the precarious balance of life within the whispering woods. That day, he learned that even the most mundane hunt could turn deadly, and that vigilance was not merely a habit but a covenant with survival itself. He carried the memory of that narrow escape, not as a fear, but as a sharpened awareness, a reminder that every moment in the wild was a precious gift, and that his 9 lives were not to be squandered. The close call with the hawk instilled in Whiskers a deeper respect for the forest's unseen dangers, but also a bolder curiosity. He began to venture further from his familiar hunting grounds, drawn by the tantalizing promise of new scents and unexplored territories. His journey led him deeper into a part of the whispering woods that felt older, more profound. The trees here were grander, their branches intertwined like ancient, gnarled fingers, forming a dense canopy that allowed only slivers of sunlight to pierce through, dappling the forest floor in shifting patterns of light and shadow. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a rich, earthy perfume. It was here, amidst the tangled undergrowth and moss-covered stones, that Whiskers encountered his second test, his second life on the line. He was following the faint scent of a rabbit, its trail leading him through a particularly thick patch of ferns. His senses, usually so reliable, were slightly dulled by the unfamiliar surroundings. He felt a sudden, inexplicable shift in the air, a prickle of unease that made the hairs on his back stand up. Before he could react, a flash of russet fur darted from behind a fallen log. It was a fox, larger and more cunning than any he had encountered before, its eyes glinting with predatory intent. The fox was quicker than the hawk, closer, and its movements were silent, fluid. Whiskers reacted instantly, a blur of black fur. He didn't run away in a straight line. Instead, he zigzagged wildly, using the dense ferns and low-hanging branches as cover. The fox, initially caught off guard by the cat's unpredictable movements, pressed its advantage, its sharp muzzle inches from Whiskers' tail. This wasn't just a chase. It was a battle of wits and agility. Whiskers knew the forest now, its contours, its hidden obstacles. He darted under a thick root system, forcing the larger fox to scramble over it. He weaved through a cluster of thorny bushes, knowing his sleek body could slip through where the fox's broader frame would snag. The chase led them to a small, rocky ravine, obscured by thick ivy. Whiskers, with a desperate leap, scaled the crumbling side of the ravine, his claws finding purchase on the rough stone. The fox, unable to follow, let out a frustrated snarl from below. Whiskers paused at the top, panting, watching the fox retreat, defeated. He had used the terrain, his knowledge, and his sheer will to outsmart a larger, more powerful predator. His heart still hammered against his ribs, but a surge of triumph coursed through him. He was learning, adapting, becoming more than just a cat. He was becoming a part of the forest's intricate tapestry of life and death. As he recovered, he noticed something peculiar just beyond the ravine. Partially hidden by ancient ivy and moss were the crumbling remains of what looked like old stone walls, perhaps an ancient forgotten structure. He cautiously approached, his curiosity outweighing his caution. The air here felt different, almost sacred. Moss-covered stones, intricately carved, lay scattered among the roots of colossal trees. It was a place untouched by time, a silent testament to a forgotten past. He explored the ruins, finding sheltered nooks and crannies that offered perfect hiding spots. One particular alcove, nestled deep within a collapsed wall, was surprisingly dry and protected. It felt safe, almost like a sanctuary. He realized this wasn't just a discovery. It was a new haven, a secret place to rest, to observe, to simply be. This hidden path, fraught with danger, had led him not only to another survival, but to a profound discovery, a new layer to his forest home. He had not only outrun a predator, but found a silent guardian, a silent witness to his journey in the heart of the ancient woods. The discovery of the ancient ruins provided Whiskers with a new sense of security, a secret sanctuary within the vastness of the woods. He often returned there, not just for shelter, but to observe the world from its high, crumbling walls, feeling a profound connection to the forgotten beings who had once walked its grounds. His encounters with the hawk and the fox had sharpened his senses to an almost supernatural degree, making him acutely aware of every rustle, every scent, every shift in the air. Yet the forest held more than just predators. It held creatures of immense power and gentle spirit, a lesson Whiskers was soon to learn. One afternoon, drawn by the sweet scent of wild berries, Whiskers ventured into a clearing he had never seen before. It was a vast, open space, bathed in sunlight, surrounded by ancient, towering pines. In the center, a patch of vibrant wildflowers swayed gently in the breeze. As he was about to pounce on a grasshopper, a massive shadow fell over him. He froze, every muscle tensing, his fur bristling. Slowly he looked up, his jade eyes widening in astonishment. Standing before him was a colossal brown bear, a creature of immense power and majesty. It was easily 10 times his size, its fur shaggy, earthy brown, its eyes dark and intelligent. This was his third brush with death, his third life hanging precariously in the balance. Fear, primal and overwhelming, seized him. He flattened himself against the ground, trying to become invisible, his heart pounding like a drum against his ribs. The bear, seemingly unaware of the tiny cat cowering beneath its shadow, lumbered forward, its massive paws crushing twigs and leaves with each step. It lowered its head, sniffing at the berry bush. Whiskers could feel the vibrations of its movements through the earth, the warm, musky scent of its fur filling the air. He expected a roar, a swipe of a monstrous paw, an end. But none came. The bear was simply foraging, its attention entirely focused on the ripe berries. It plucked them with surprising delicacy, its massive claws a stark contrast to the gentle way it moved among the bushes. Whiskers cautiously began to observe. He noticed the bear's calm demeanor, the way it paused to listen to the forest sounds, the almost meditative way it ate. There was no aggression, no malice, just a quiet, powerful presence living its life. Slowly, fear began to recede, replaced by a profound sense of awe and curiosity. He realized that not all large creatures were threats. Some were simply part of the forest's grand tapestry, living their lives in parallel. He watched the bear for what felt like an eternity, a tiny black silhouette against the immense backdrop of the gentle giant. When the bear finally finished its meal, it let out a soft sigh, stretched its mighty limbs, and ambled away into the deeper woods, disappearing as silently as it had appeared. Whiskers remained, unmoving, for a long time after the bear had gone. The air still hummed with its powerful presence, but now it was a calm, almost reassuring hum. He had faced a creature that could have easily ended his existence, yet it had passed him by, unaware or simply unconcerned. This encounter taught him a vital lesson. Not every powerful being in the forest was an enemy. Sometimes understanding and observation were more potent than flight or fight. He learned to distinguish between true predators driven by hunger and the gentle giants who simply coexisted, sharing the same ancient woods. His third life was not lost to a battle, but gained through a profound understanding of coexistence, adding another layer of wisdom to his evolving forest spirit. With each passing season, Whisker's understanding of the Whispering Woods deepened. He had learned to navigate its dangers, to appreciate its hidden wonders, and to coexist with its diverse inhabitants. But the forest, in its unpredictable wisdom, always held new challenges. His next great test, which would claim 2 of his precious 9 lives, came with the unprecedented deluge of a late summer storm. For 3 days and 3 nights, the heavens opened, unleashing a torrential downpour that transformed the familiar streams into raging torrents and turned low-lying areas into treacherous bogs. Whiskers had sought shelter in his hidden ruin, listening to the relentless drumming of rain on the ancient stones, but hunger eventually drove him out. He needed to reach a specific patch of high ground where he knew small game often sheltered from the rain. But between him and salvation lay the whispering stream, now a furious, churning river. Usually, the stream was a gentle ribbon of water, easily crossed by nimble paws. Now it roared, a muddy, turbulent beast ripping at its banks, carrying debris, fallen branches, uprooted plants in its powerful current. This was his 4th life and potentially his 5th in jeopardy. He paced the bank, searching desperately for a crossing. A fallen log, usually a sturdy bridge, was now submerged, its slippery surface pounded by the water. The roar of the stream was deafening, a relentless force that seemed to mock his small size. He saw a small, rocky islet in the middle, but the gap was too wide, the current too swift. A branch, thicker than his body, floated past, seemingly offering a precarious passage. With a desperate leap, Whiskers landed on it, his claws digging into the rough bark. The branch spun wildly, tossing him about, threatening to dislodge him into the churning depths. He clung on with all his might, his fur soaked, his body shivering not just from the cold water, but from the sheer terror of the raging current. The branch scraped against a half-submerged rock, throwing him off balance. He slid, tumbling into the icy water. The current seized him instantly, pulling him under. He fought, paddling furiously with all four paws, his lungs burning, his mind screaming. He was pulled downstream, bumping against unseen obstacles, disoriented by the swirling water. Just when he thought he couldn't hold his breath any longer, his head broke the surface. He gasped for air, sputtering, his eyes wide with desperate fear. Ahead, he saw a cluster of exposed roots reaching out from the bank like a lifeline. With a final monumental effort, he clawed his way towards them, dragging his waterlogged body onto the muddy bank. He lay there, gasping, shaking, utterly exhausted, the roar of the stream still echoing in his ears. He had lost his fourth life to the current, and narrowly escaped losing his fifth to the sheer force of nature. But as he lay there, recovering, he noticed something extraordinary. The stream, though still powerful, had carved a new path, exposing a hidden grotto. Within it, sheltered from the rain, was a patch of moss unlike any he had ever seen. It glowed with a soft, ethereal light, casting an otherworldly green luminescence on the damp stones. It pulsated gently, a living light in the heart of the storm-ravaged forest. He cautiously approached, mesmerized. The air around the moss was cool and strangely invigorating. He rubbed his cheek against it, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over him. This was a secret, a profound beauty revealed only by the stream's destructive power. He had survived, not just physically, but had gained a deeper appreciation for the forest's hidden magic, a silent reward for his resilience. The whispering stream, once a threat, had become a revealer of wonders, adding another layer to the mystique of his wild home.
The memory of the glowing moss and the raging stream remained with Whiskers, a testament to the forest's capacity for both destruction and revelation. Yet, as the vibrant colors of autumn faded and the air grew crisp with the promise of winter, the true test of endurance began. The whispering woods transformed, shedding its lush green cloak for a stark, skeletal beauty. The ground hardened, the streams grew sluggish, and the familiar sense of summer vanished, replaced by the biting scent of frost and the sharp tang of pine needles. Food became scarce. The mice burrowed deep, the birds flew south, and the squirrels, once abundant, guarded their dwindling stashes with fierce territoriality. This was the long, slow challenge, a test that would chip away at his remaining lives, not with sudden, dramatic events, but with the relentless grind of cold, hunger, and exhaustion. These were his 6th, 7th, and 8th lives hanging in the balance. Whiskers adapted. He learned to conserve energy, moving with slow, deliberate steps, his hunting becoming an exercise in extreme patience. He learned to read the subtle signs of the forest, the faint scent of a buried nut, the tiny tracks of a vole beneath a thin layer of snow. His sleek black fur, usually a camouflage, now felt thin against the biting wind. He shivered constantly, his body drawing on every reserve of warmth. One night, a blizzard descended with a vengeance. Snow fell relentlessly, thick and heavy, blanketing the forest in a pristine, suffocating white. Whiskers was caught far from his hidden ruin, shivering uncontrollably. He dug a shallow burrow beneath the roots of a snow-leaden spruce, huddling against its trunk, trying to find respite from the relentless cold. The wind howled through the branches like a mournful spirit, and the snow piled higher, threatening to bury him. He felt his strength draining, his body trembling with cold. This was a slow kind of death, insidious and relentless. He spent days like this, moving from one inadequate shelter to another, constantly searching for food that wasn't there. His paws grew numb, his whiskers stiff with ice. He was a shadow of his former self, gaunt and weary, but his spirit remained unbroken. He remembered the resilience he had shown against the hawk, the cunning against the fox, the awe before the bear, the sheer will against the flood. These memories fueled a flicker of determination within him. He pushed on, driven by an instinct deeper than hunger or cold. The instinct to survive. One frigid afternoon, his paws aching, his stomach growling, he stumbled upon an old, abandoned logger's cabin, half buried under drifts of snow. It was dilapidated, its roof sagging, but it offered a promise of shelter. He squeezed through a broken window pane, landing softly on a floor covered in dust and dried leaves. The air inside was still cold, but undeniably warmer than the biting wind outside. He found a small, wooden crate tipped on its side and curled up inside, burying himself in a pile of old sawdust. It wasn't the warmth of a hearth, but it was enough. He rested, his exhausted body sinking into a deep, dreamless sleep. Days turned into weeks. Whiskers learned to hunt for hibernating insects and the occasional desperate mouse that ventured into the cabin. He conserved his energy, waiting out the worst of the blizzards, emerging only when absolutely necessary. The cabin became his fortress against the elements, a testament to his adaptability. He had faced the slow, agonizing threat of winter, battling not a single predator, but the very essence of the season. He had spent his 6th, 7th, and 8th lives battling the chill, the hunger, the relentless struggle, and had emerged, thinned but unbroken, a true survivor of the Whispering Woods. He was more than just a cat. He was a living testament to the forest's harsh beauty and the enduring spirit of its creatures.
Winter's icy grip finally began to loosen, giving way to the gentle thaw of early spring. The snow receded, revealing the damp, dark earth beneath, and the forest, though still brown and stark, held the promise of new life. Whiskers, lean and scarred by the harsh season, emerged from the abandoned cabin, his senses reawakening to the subtle shifts in the air, the faint scent of budding leaves, and the first tentative calls of returning birds. He had survived the most brutal tests, but the forest, ever unpredictable, had one final, ultimate challenge in store for him, a challenge that would demand every ounce of his accumulated wisdom and instinct, consuming his 9th and final life. One unusually warm and dry spring afternoon, a new, terrifying scent drifted on the wind. Smoke. It was faint at first, a distant, acrid tang, but it grew rapidly, carried by a sudden, fierce wind. A wildfire. It was every forest creature's worst nightmare, a destructive force that consumed everything in its path, indiscriminate and relentless. This was his 9th life, the ultimate test. Whiskers felt an instinctive surge of panic, but years of survival had taught him to channel fear into action. He saw the ominous plume of smoke rising in the distance, a dark column against the pale sky. The wind shifted, and suddenly, the roar of the fire was audible, a hungry, crackling beast devouring the dry undergrowth. Animals began to flee, a panicked stampede of deer, rabbits, and squirrels, their eyes wide with terror. Whiskers ran with them, a small black streak amidst the fleeing multitude. He knew the forest like the back of his paw, its hidden paths, its secret clearings, its treacherous ravines. He didn't follow the main stampede, which would lead to chaos and potential traps. Instead, he veered off, heading towards the whispering stream, remembering the grotto where the glowing moss had been. It was a desperate gamble, but it was his only hope. The heat was intense, searing his fur. Sparks rained down, igniting the dry leaves around him. Trees exploded into flame, their branches roaring like torches. The air grew thick with smoke, making it hard to breathe, stinging his eyes. He coughed, his lungs burning, but he pushed on, driven by an unyielding will to live. He could hear the desperate cries of other animals, the thunderous crash of falling trees. He leaped over burning logs, dodged falling embers, his agility pushed to its absolute limit. His paws burned, but he ignored the pain, focusing only on the distant sound of the stream, his last hope. Finally, through the swirling smoke and dancing flames, he saw it, the glint of water, the faint outline of the grotto. He plunged into the stream, the cool water a blessed shock against his burning fur, his lungs gasping for the relatively cleaner air near the water's surface. He swam with a desperate strength he didn't know he possessed, reaching the grotto, pulling himself onto the damp, cool earth beside the glowing moss. The grotto, protected by the stream and its natural rock formations, was an oasis of relative calm amidst the inferno. The fire raged outside, its heat still palpable, its roar a constant threat, but here he was safe. He lay there, utterly spent, watching the orange glow of the flames dance outside the grotto's entrance, listening to the roar of the fire slowly receding as it moved further into the forest. He had survived. He had used his ninth life, his last great reserve of luck and resilience, to escape the most devastating force the forest could unleash. When the smoke cleared days later and the world was a stark, ash-covered landscape, Whiskers emerged, forever changed. He found a secluded, untouched clearing, untouched by the fire, a small haven nestled deep within a section of the forest he had never explored before. It was a sun-dappled glade, rich with new growth, a fresh spring bubbling from the ground. Here he felt a profound sense of peace. He had faced every challenge the Whispering Woods could throw at him, every predator, every natural disaster, every season's harshness. He had used all his 9 lives, not in a reckless manner, but in a testament to his adaptability, his courage, and his deep connection to the wild. He was no longer just a cap. He was the spirit of resilience, a silent guardian of the forest, content in his hard-won sanctuary, living out his remaining days in quiet triumph, a true master of the Whispering Woods.